18 to 24, but we're going to stick with 18 to 24. Usually for the youth that we serve, they have a history of system involvement, either child welfare or probation. 60% of youth in foster care are youth of color. And in California, there are 55,983 transitional age youth in the system. Here we go. Okay. So I want to talk about legal definitions and developmental definitions. Because the youth that we serve at Unity Care are 18 to 24. And legally, they are considered adults, which means they have the same privileges that adults have. There's things that they can do at 18 and 21 that they could not do before legally. They can vote, they can buy certain items, they can join the military. There's things they can do. They are considered adults. And people often say, oh, you serve adults, you work with adults. And technically that is correct. However, developmentally, I would argue that is not true. So I'm going to do a little bit of science, but not too much science. So the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that is not fully developed until you're 26 years old. Now that part of the brain does a host of things. I'm going to read a couple of those things to you, and I want you to think about what I'm saying on this list. So the prefrontal cortex is responsible for decision-making, reasoning, personality, social appropriateness, executive functioning, emotional regulation, behavior control, planning, attention focus, predicting consequences, and considering functions. It's a lot of stuff that happens in that part of the brain, which is not developed until you're 26. So let's look at these two things. Legally, I'm an adult, but the part of my brain that makes adult decisions isn't developed yet. So we have a bit of a disconnect here. And I say that because Sanders will probably get more into this when he talks about a day in the life, is think about the things that we ask young people to do and the kinds of decisions we ask them to make. So just think about that in the context of what we ask them to do as a society, but what they actually can do with where they are in their development. And this is assuming that people are developing kind of on schedule with no disruption. So we're assuming best case scenario to get us to 26 with a fully functional prefrontal cortex. And just to give a context, 24,000 youth age out of foster care in California every year, which means they turn 18 and have the option of staying in accepted foster care, which we will talk about in a later discussion, but I mentioned that because I think it's relevant for some context. And so when you think about system-involved TAYouth, these are some statistics that may, for those of you that work with this population, that may not surprise you. More than 20% of youth are unemployed by the time they're 23. 25% don't have a high school diploma or equivalent. 75% are pregnant by age 21, and nearly 33% are parents when they leave government care. Okay, 82% are more likely to become homeless. Black youth are 3 times more likely to experience homelessness. 57% report a serious mental health disorder, and 80% are in need of mental health support. So 80%. So whatever 80% is of 24,000, that's the number that we're dealing with in terms of people that are in need of some kind of mental health support. And that support will vary. Like, I mean, there's more severe, there's kind of supportive counseling, there's variations on that. But I want us to think about what those numbers are telling us. Because when I hear that, what I'm hearing is that youth are hitting 18, whether they stay in the system or they don't stay in the system, but they're having all of these kinds of poor outcomes as a result of not having the things that they need. And I think in the next slide, I will talk about kind of some general things that TAYouth need. So I was reading a study that was done, I think it was done in Canada, and it was done specifically around transitional age youth and kind of really studying that group of community members between 18 and 24 to understand what do they need. So they were doing surveys and observations and just kind of figuring out. what they need. And the things I'm going to read on this list are not going to surprise anybody on this call, because you're going to be, of course, this is the things they need. There's a graphic on the left, but I'm going to just kind of read through a list of the things that youth need, transitional age youth need specifically. They need education and training for careers and jobs. They need housing, which we all know because we work in that space. They need meaningful relationships, which usually involves interpersonal relationships with peers, but also mentoring. Like they need support from older adults to help to give them guidance, to give them support, to kind of, because they're still teaching that's happening for this age group. They need life skills. In life skills, I think about financial literacy, navigating employment, navigating finding and maintaining housing, navigating interpersonal relationships. Like these are all life skills that they need. A sense of identity. Who am I? Who do I want to be? Where do I come from? Where do I want to go? They also need a sense of kind of emotional support as well as engagement. And engagement is something that Sanders and I have talked a lot about in terms of how do we keep young people engaged, and not so much, and I would argue, not so much engaged with us, but engaged with themselves. Meaning, as a therapist, I would say this to my clients: I want you to be as interested in yourself as I am in you. I want you to be as curious about yourself as I am about you. I want you to be engaged with yourself to understand, like, what do I want? What do I need? What's important to me? And so thinking about how we teach that. And a lot of the things that I said that they need are things that will prevent them from chronic homelessness, substance use, lack of support. Because one of the things that we're striving for at Unity Care is to have our youth, and I say it a little bit differently than a lot of people, but I'm always saying the goal is for our clients not to be system involved their entire lives, to be adults that are no longer system involved. That is our ultimate goal. So that means creating a level of self-sufficiency. And how do we do that, kind of given the things that we know that young people need? So let's talk about some of the barriers. So as I said earlier, we're assuming we have normal development that gets us to a developed prefrontal cortex that gives us the mental capacity to do the things that adults need to do to thrive. So you take our clients that we serve, who many have been system involved for a large part of their lives. So you think about a person who's system involved, they don't have a lot of agency. They're told what to do, when to do, how to do it, and there's consequences for not doing it. So there's not always a lot of room for decision-making. There's a lot of changing of adults in and out of their lives for various reasons. Different social workers, different foster placements, different group homes. So think about kind of what that would look like. History of systemic abuses. There's a lot of trauma in kind of being system involved. Even in the best case scenario, it's traumatic to be kind of moved around and displaced. Lack of stability in placements. I mean, we know on average how many placements our youth may go through before they get to us, particularly if they've been system involved since they were minors, because they may have been moved around several times. They may have been reunified with their families and then taken out again, which creates its own set of traumas. Multiple school transfers. I was talking to a case manager at Wixon in Oakland, and she was talking about helping one of her clients get back into school. And she said, she goes, well, he's been in 8 schools in the last 2 years. I was like, 8 schools in 2 years. So how does one develop? And how does someone learn in that environment, particularly if there's always the fear of being taken out or removed? Possible neurological and developmental issues. So that goes into assuming that their birth mother had a healthy pregnancy and there weren't any issues or delays. Assuming that if they did have any kind of learning issues, they were discovered and there was an intervention happening early on. But for a lot of our youth, that doesn't happen. Like they may have an IEP, but it doesn't mean that anyone is kind of using that document to help to assist them in learning. So if you take all of these factors on top of being a transitional age youth and having those other needs that I listed, this is kind of where we start to see the challenges in our work. And so I set the stage for kind of what we're talking about. Sanders is going to talk about kind of what the day-to-day looks like and managing and how the Unity Care works with the young people that we serve. So Sanders, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Larry. So I just want to talk a little bit more about what it looks like a day in the life at Unity Care, and I'll kind of talk through some of these key points here that kind of highlights our path and our, the blueprint and how we work with our clients at Unity Care. Now, in this meeting, we have potential donors, we have county workers, we have community partners, and we have some of our staff here. So a lot of this will mean or feel different for everyone, but the goal is just to kind of walk you through our process at Unity Care. So if we look at the bullet points here, I'm gonna kind of switch the second and first one, right? We like to intersect with our social workers or community partners or referral agencies at day one. Our goal is to make sure that there's a connection from the very beginning. There's a process that our TAE clients go through as they come into our program. But overall, our goal is once they are applying for our program, our goal right away is how do we connect with their social worker or anybody that's on their team coming into their program. Because it's essential for us to get to know a little bit more about the clients before they come with this and identify their needs, right? Also to see if we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us, right? That's extremely important for us. And most of the time it's if we're a good fit for them, right? Because we want to make sure that their needs are fulfilled and they're met and that we're doing it with purpose and integrity, right? And that's always what we keep at the forefront of everything that we do. So as clients come into their program, we do a needs assessment on them. Our goal from this point is to make sure and identify each unique need that our clients may have. And case management and support of our clients is not like a one size fit all type of deal. We want to make sure that we are putting together a tailored plan for that specific individual, whether that means a housing readiness plan, education, employment, mental health support, whatever that is. We want to make sure that we're having a specialized goals for each client individually. Next, and Larry kind of talked about it, is just the engagement piece, right? Like we want to make sure that we are building trust because we understand that trust is key to engagement, right? So our case managers and our frontline staff are always making sure that they're consistent with their meeting with the clients. They're coming from a space that's strength-based and they're meeting them where they're at. And most of all, like Larry said, we want to make sure that our clients are just as interested in themselves as we are, right? So we're building that trust, and that trust that they build with us will then in turn allow them to practice those same behaviors and characteristics in the community. And our goal overall is to promote open communication and mentorship, right? That's how we like to kind of look at our case managers in dealing with our clients. Accessing external services, we want to make sure that, all depending on what needs are need to be met from their needs assessment, that, if we need to connect them to a vocational school, if we need to connect them to external mental health services, anything that may possibly be needed for each individual, we want to make sure that we have. Now, one thing to mention is that we do have services in Monterey County, Santa Clara County, Alameda County, San Francisco County, and all the way up to Placer, Sacramento area. So those services are different in each area, but our goal from each of our managers and directors in each of those prospective places is that if there's external resources, we're going to make sure that we build strong rapport and great relationships with anybody that we have to refer out to. We want to make sure, and because there's representation of programs outside of TAE, We also have a housing navigation program at Unity Care, and also a homeless supportive housing program. What we know is every client that comes into our program, we prepare them with having a housing readiness plan. This is what we do to help them identify housing options for them, teach them the process of applying for vouchers in the future, budget planning and savings, the importance of knowing those things before they even get to that point, right? And also to how to engage landlords, right? Like how to speak to people that they may have to interact with in the process of obtaining housing, right? And our overall focus of that is to just equip our youth with stable, independent living skills that support them in that process. Lastly, we have accountability towards long-term goals, whether that's school or whether that's employment. Our goals is to make sure that our case management is purposeful, and we're regularly checking in with our clients to make sure they're staying on track and holding them to their goals, right? I know it's with all that our young folks go through prior to going through here, and Larry said this earlier, it's you know, with them being system involved, there's a lot of barriers for them to come through, and I'll talk about that a little bit after. But I mean, just think about folks that are not system involved. It's difficult for them to navigate just in life without going through these things. So as much as we know that it's hard, we want to still make sure that we are consistent in holding them accountable in a positive, strength-based way, of course. But we want to make sure that it's we are there and we are holding them accountable towards these long-term goals, and we're doing our part to support them in that. So let's go into talk about barriers. So there's some barriers that we've noticed in our process of working with all of our clients, right? If you see, if we go talk about these words, and it's hard to see these words because they feel as though they're not really strength-based, right? But it's really what it is, right? And I think our response to how we deal with this is the strength-based portion of it. But as we all know, past trauma affects behavior and emotional stability of anybody, right? And so our approach to this is to approach that with the trauma-informed care and to provide sensitive support to our clients, right? And I always say, you know, it's because I think people throw the trauma-informed word out there, you know, too loosely, but I like to say that we like to create a trauma-informed environment, but also be prepared for that and make sure that we're prepared to follow up with the healing parts at the end of that, right? So that's important. Undertreated mental health symptoms. Our goal is to make sure that we're connecting youth with mental health resources. A lot of this is mental health support is kind of tough for our young folks because it's kind of cliche for them to feel that mental health support is something that they need or they don't need. So I think we're just creative in ways that we engage folks in understanding of those positive supports that they can have to support with their mental health support. Challenges with interpersonal relationships. Our goal is to foster social skills and positive peer interactions. We do that with, you know, establishing groups, whether it's in our congregate care places or in our apartments. We create spaces so they can interact with other folks in our program, create groups and discuss certain topics that allow them to explore and to build up those interpersonal relationships. Substance use disorder, it's something that's really huge within our program, and we all know, just as mental health issues that occur, this impacts health and stability of our young folks, right? It impacts the health and stability of anybody. So our goal is to make sure that there's always access to treatment programs and recovery programs if needed, and also to just try to incorporate group settings that support that too, whether that's from like a harm prevention lens or just bringing awareness to these things that could impact them. So yeah, and also too, what we're doing is we're bringing 7 challenges back into the fold. It seems to be a group curriculum that had worked for us in the past with our young folks, and we're looking to bring that back as just an overall curriculum that's used by all of our staff and that they're trained and understood. So yeah, other examples of things that we may see day to day is maybe self-harm, uh, unsafe sexual practices. So we have to kind of approach those spaces like from an intervention space, right? Just provide education and risk reduction strategies and how folks are dealing with their daily lives, right? And just kind of bring awareness to some of these things that are happening and occurring just every day with our program. So yeah, that's some of our barriers to success. I'll pass it on forward.
And now I'm going to stop sharing and open it up for any kind of questions, comments, observations that people want to share, kind of based on the information that was given. Particularly for folks at UniCare who are working with our young people. Anything that you want to add from your own experience?
I think for me, I think you guys, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm in the office. I'm sorry, it's noisy. I think you guys hit on all the topics, and it also a lot of the stuff that you guys mentioned about the barriers, it's also important to know, it's youth led, whatever they are open to and can, about the mental health and whatever they're open to. I think it's also like putting it out there and let them know there are resources. They might not be open and available or willing to go out and get it at that moment, but just letting them know, hey, you need a referral, reach out to your social worker. There's always something available.
Thank you for that. There's a comment in the chat from Ellen Woods. What can ordinary citizens do to help Tay youth besides donating to Unity Care? Great question. I think one of the things, and this is probably a longer discussion, but I think one way is helping the young people in our communities find resources, whether it's job training, mentoring. Sanders, I've talked a lot about how do we find mentorship for our young people, particularly around vocations and employment. How do we help them find internships in the community? So anything that can help in that way, I think is always a good resource for our young people, because a lot of our young people don't think that anybody cares about them, including our community. Like they like, people don't care about me, people don't engage me, people don't look me in the eye. And so if people can volunteer their time to help young people, I think is a way that everyday people or ordinary citizens can give back, because I think that goes a long way for people just feeling seen and understood and somebody willing to invest in them who is not a paid professional. And yes, our case managers do amazing work and the county workers work really hard, but sometimes they just want somebody who just like wants to be there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
And they want to see them thrive and succeed.
Yeah. I think also too this, like attending sessions like this and telling folks about sessions like this is the start, right? Oftentimes, I think every day, like I feel like I'm a walking billboard for Unity Care and an advocate just for our young folks. But in my conversations, I'm often bringing up the work that we do, and folks are like, "Wow, like really?" Like and the first thing that folks say is that's an honorable job. That's amazing. You're doing the great work. And it is. However, I think the thing that I always walk away from that is to understand that folks really don't see and understand it. I think that was part of the reason why we're doing this stuff, right? It's like giving the information that we have is important, right? And then now going and sharing that to the community is even more important, right? So I would say anybody that's on this call who heard something that's new for the first time, tell somebody. And as we have these presentations in the future, invite more people, because I think outside of donating, whether it's your money or your time to volunteer with some things that may be occurring, or I think the biggest thing is just bringing awareness to this population that needs our support. Yeah, and like Larry said, making yourselves human and accessible to them. I think that's important.
There's another question. How, from Jessica, how do young people get involved with Unity Care? Like if they are in the systemic extended foster care, who refers them? So Sanders, I'm gonna let you take that one because you are in charge of that process and do
Yeah,
a
yeah,
great job with that.
yeah. So most of the time, it'll come from a social worker. If they're involved in care and they need to extend their services in foster care. So Unity Care has an array of services, right? But if I was going to start at the beginning, in our transitional housing placement programs for TAYU, typically it's it's the social workers that are referring them. There's a list of folks who of community-based organizations that have services similar to ours or have contracts, and the social workers will then reach out to us and say, "Hey, I have a client. This is what's going on for them. This is their county of origin. Do you have availability in your program?" What we would then at that point do is interview that client. We would talk with their social worker and we would see if they're a good fit. We would kind of talk to them about what our process is, the expectations in our program, the do's and don'ts. And yeah, and the goal is that they are either in school or they're working or they're, getting removing any barriers that may prevent them from doing either one of those. Now, after when they're extended out of care, and like let's say they're going into they're aging out, we do also have a THP Plus program, which extends their time past 21. And then for additional programs that we have at Unity Care, we have a navigation program, but that extends their support after they age out. But that's only in San Francisco County, and we also have that in Monterey County. And then Unity Care also has a homeless supportive housing program, which is more like a flexible housing program. And that's also in San Francisco. And for those clients, they don't necessarily have had to been in foster care. They just haven't had to experience homelessness at some point. But those clients are referred to us from different organizations. Excuse me. Any other questions? And Jessica, did that answer your question?
Is there a timeline contract?
Do you mean like per client? So the time,
Sorry, yes, for the client. Like when you said they sign a contract, is there a time limit that they need to continue services? Like, is it a 6-month program that they need to
no,
agree
they
to?
would be until they age out, right?
Oh, okay.
At 21, right? Now if and that's being if they're just, being compliant within the program. And just if they're not compliant, let's say like they violate any of the, the rules of our program, what we would then do is put them on a individual contract, right?
Mhm.
Based on whatever behavior. Like let's say, they were having guest over or maybe had brought drugs or alcohol into the facility, right? So our goal would be then to talk with them, put them on contract specifically, but that process would be done through a CFT. That would be with the social worker and with their CASA if they're involved. I think that you may be a CASA.
Yeah, staff at Casa. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we make sure that their team is involved because a lot of the times we don't want to just say, hey, you know what? They didn't do a good job with this. We're letting them go next week, right? We want to
Yeah.
give them a chance to regroup and get on the same page, right? Because it's not easy. And we understand that, right? So
Mhm.
our goal is to bring the team into fold and see how we can all support one another to push them towards their goals.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. What county are you with, Jessica?
Santa Clara.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Any other, I'll send you beat me too. I was gonna say, any other final thoughts or questions for folks? I don't want to hold people because I know it's the start of the day for many of us. All right. Well, I appreciate people taking the time this morning to join us. We'll be doing this again in December.